Welcome to Edifying Together with Tamir D. Harper, a podcast dedicated to empowering teachers of color, brought to you by Edifying Teachers, the fastest growing community of educators of color in the country. Join us throughout the school year as we follow the journey of Tamir Harper, a black male educator in his first year as a classroom teacher in West Philly.
Welcome back to Edifying Together, as we Edifying Together, a podcast dedicated to empowering teachers of color, brought to you by Edifying Teachers. We are here with the one and only D. Watkins, and I have a dope co-host today that I want to let introduce himself, because if you haven't heard his music or even read about his work, it is powerful. So Corey, I'm going to let you jump in there.
Oh, thank you. So good morning. Happy to be here on this podcast with you co-hosting. I'm Corey Carter. I work with the Sherman Scholars Program at UMBC. I'm an educator and an artist as well. So I have a few projects coming out. Just released a mixtape. It's been a week now. So I just released a mixtape, and I have a album coming out called Progress Report, which is basically just talking about the experience as a black male educator, but it's all through the lens of hip hop. So that's coming out. So we'll keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I'm really excited to get into this conversation today as well.
Likewise. Corey, you want to introduce the main star of the conversation?
Absolutely. That
we're excited to have been able to travel to Baltimore to have a enriched conversation about his book, Black Boy Smile.
Absolutely. So we're really excited to be here today with D. Watkins. D. Watkins is a New York Times bestselling author, an HBO writer, editor for Salon, award-winning lecturer at University of Baltimore, and also just want to congratulate you on, this is book number 5. So five times. So
thank you.
So welcome, D. Watkins.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to share a space and be in a space where at least I feel like I belong, right? As you know, born and raised Philly, and as I've read your book, really understood, right? Finally read something on paper that talks about being first a black boy in the city, but becoming a black man in the city. Tell us about what made you write it. Like, what was your thoughts? How did you get there to write this book?
I think success as a writer led to me having different feelings about the way I was being perceived. When you broke and you starting out, everybody can connect with you. Everybody loves you. Everybody loves the underdog. And then when you make it, I signed them HBO deals and got some big ghostwriting jobs, and some really great things was happening for me. A lot of people who I connected with initially started to build this larger than life persona around who I was. They already know where I come from, and now I have, some success to add to that. And it's like, here's this person who's bulletproof, who doesn't feel anything, who doesn't need support, who's not capable of giving support. And I'm like, nah, that's not it. We are depressed. We're vulnerable. We cry. We go through things. We're not invincible. We need love. We deserve to get and give love. And I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that conversation is just so important in being able to unpack all of those things that you just covered. I think in the book you, in one way, encapsulated that a little bit by calling it the lie. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think it was, for me, Tamir talked about how powerful it was to hear that experience or to read that experience. And for me as well, just being a father and looking at, trying to have those conversations with my children, et cetera. But what's the state of the lie for you right now? And like, what was that process for you, like trying to unpack that and put it on paper?
I think it was a common thing that I saw in my own life, and a common thing. It was something else that I saw with my friends. And in a way, I'm still guilty. I'm still guilty because in a tense situation, if the feeling is anxiety or if the feeling is fear, my knee jerk reaction is to act like, oh, what'd he say? You know what I'm saying? And I don't even care what you said. Mm-hmm. I don't even care. I don't want conflict. I don't want violence. I don't want danger. But it goes right back into to being a father, to being from an oppressed place where violence has been the answer for so many different things. It's almost a reaction. You have to catch yourself and say, no, it's not how we're going to do it. Like I found myself, and this is the situation that actually happened on Father's Day. We have this cookout down Bochecks every year. Like hundreds of people from the neighborhood come, and it's like one of the only peaceful days, especially in this particular neighborhood, throughout the whole year, because it's just a lot of stuff going on in East Baltimore right now. I'm not saying we don't have other peaceful days, but this is like a day where two people who have conflict will see each other and be like, yo, we out here with the kids, it's Father's Day, whatever. And you know, this year I'm out there, gave some books away, I'm taking pictures with kids, and I'm like, I'm trying to stay out the way. And I'm walking through the crowd and I'm greeting people, and I'm like, you know, just people haven't seen me. It's been a minute, and pandemic, all that stuff. So I'm just happy to be out and around people. And there was a guy who was looking at me by the grill, and he's looking at me when I'm outside, when I'm outside of the park, leaning on the truck talking to somebody. And he's looking at me when I'm taking pictures with somebody's grandmother. Then he's looking at me on the basketball court. Then he gets me alone, and he starts grilling me like, well, how come you didn't cast me on the show? And this, that, and the third. And I'm like, whoa, relax, right? Relax. He says, so check this out. You ever been to a shopping mall? He said, yeah. I said, you know how you got like Macy's on one side and then Nordstrom on the other side? He said, yeah. I said, well, I was in the writer's room. That wasn't even inside the mall. So casting was like in Nordstrom somewhere. I'm over downtown locker room in another county. I don't even know the first thing about, like, other than I had a person over there who I used to cast a lot of people, but that wasn't my position on the project. It was strictly creative, and then working with actors to make sure they took our words and made them reality. That was my role, right? So now and I'm upset because I'm like, why are you even, like, the show's not even on anymore. Like, why are you know what I'm saying? So now people who love me, and now they circling, and they're like, yo, what, like, is it a problem? And I'm like, nah, it's not a problem. I'm clearly upset, but I'm like, this is not the way. It's not that. So, so now I'm upset and angry, and I'm feeling like I'm being attacked. So that lie creeps up, and it's like, now you got to be the bigger aggressor. And then the people around me is like, oh, well, he's the one who had paid for this thing or paid for that thing. So we got to make sure we protect him at all costs. So now they got to be the aggressor. They got to hurt somebody who they probably got a better relationship with than me, because I'm gone all the time. You know what I'm saying? So all of this stuff was just a big mess, and we was able to diffuse the situation. I had a phone conversation with the kid. I gave him my phone number. I had a phone conversation with him the other day. He apologized. He said he was stressed out. His son got killed. So he was stressed out because of that. So it was just like it was something that could have been really, really ugly that we just diffused, So and that's where I'm at with it. And the main thing is self-audit. You got to look at yourself. Am I being an asshole? Am I being a horrible person? Am I not showing love? Am I in my head too much? Like, and so I try my best to look at myself before I look at somebody else. Sorry if I'm rambling.
No, you're not. No, that's powerful. Thank you. Can I?
You got it.
I got a follow up. So, what you were talking about at the end there, kind of the self audit. Like, it almost sounds like what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like what you're saying is like the lie, and that work doesn't go away. Like, it's not like you can check a box and say, boom, okay, I did it. I'm fixed now, right?
You know this from being in the classroom. Mm-hmm. From being in the classroom. If a student has a reputation for a certain activity, and then you automatically think that they did something they didn't do, they're going to be hurt and offended. But you only know how to go back into what you know, right. And you have to catch yourself. Yo, am I not giving him or her the benefit of the doubt? Yeah. Because we do that. It is a way to answer your question. There's no finish line. Mm-hmm. There's no finish line. You will be doing self work for the rest of your life, just like you will be trying to be a great father for the rest of your life, just like you will be trying to be a great husband, wife, whatever, spouse, whatever people call it. it doesn't stop. Our relationship goes. The goal is that there's no goal. It just keeps going and going and going and going. You better send them flowers at 90 years old. You better make sure you're not being emotionally childish at 95 years old. Like, you still have to pour into that if you don't want to be labeled insufferable.
I'm still thinking, and you started talking about the lie, right? And as teachers are navigating students, how do you recommend, if you have any recommendations of how to teach students how to self-audit, right? But also how do teachers self-audit? Because we put on, oftentimes teachers put on a facade, right? And don't bring, as Chris Emden would say, full ratchetemic self to the classroom. What would you recommend teachers and do to support students, but also look into themselves?
Just be honest. Just honesty goes a long way. It goes a long way, and it's totally okay to not know. It's okay to not understand. I used to work in the classroom, and I was initially a substitute, and then I ended up getting a job at the school. I didn't have the qualifications to to do what I was doing, but it was a staffing problem, as we see, in a lot of districts across the country. So they had me in there, and I really, really thought that the kids were gonna like me because I was from the neighborhood and they were from the neighborhood, not even realizing that I was like a house phone or like a dinosaur to them. You understand what I'm saying? I'm talking about Jay-Z and Nas, and they like, what? Like, who? Like, nobody listens to that. So, and this is like a self-audit. So the self-audit is, wow, I'm thinking you're going to like the music that I came up on because it's good music. And you have a whole different culture within our culture. And their culture at this particular time, the hottest rap was Chicago drill music. And all of the kids were listening to, it wasn't G Herbo, it was Little Herb. And it was Rondo number 9, and it was L.A. Capone, and it was Chief Keef was old to them, even though he was like 12. Chief Keef was old because they found all of these other rappers on YouTube, Lil Bibby and all of these Chicago rappers and Fredo. They found these guys on YouTube, and they identified with how they dressed. They identified with their stories. They identified with them more than their lost friends. They were going through the same thing, and it was a whole world that they were tapped into. So instead of me saying, "Oh, the music was better in my day, young man," I sat down, listened to them, and I told them to tell me why they like what they like. And they did. And I started listening to it, and I absorbed it, and then it became part of my lesson. So if I'm talking about personal essay, if I'm talking about telling a story, I'm going to break down something that Dirk did. I'm going to break down something that Rondo was talking about. I'm going to break down, this kid, L.A. Capone, was like, he had a line where he said, if I had $1 on my plate, me and bro was at the store, we both gonna get 50-cent cakes, right? So it's talking about like making sure your homeboy eat too, right? So now just give me a story where you did that, or give me a story where it didn't happen, and then they can just bust it out the top of their heads, and now we have something, and now we have something special, and now I can edit, and now I can give it to this student to edit, and this student to critique, and we can go back and forth. And then the crazy thing happened is that everybody wanted to read aloud. Everybody wanted to, because they were so proud of their own story, their own resiliency, and what they had. So that was a big self-audit moment for me. And then the crazy thing that happened after that, they wanted to talk about Jay-Z. They wanted to talk about Nas. They wanted to talk about Lauryn Hill. They wanted to talk about the rap, the song, the people I came up on, because I took an interest in what they liked instead of saying, "Oh, that's phony, shorty," like my uncles did to me.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, who was it? Paulo Freire, who talks about like just recognizing the gifts that the kids bring to the classroom, right? And so like, just by you taking the self-audit, but taking a second to be curious, and then like you said, it pays dividends when they come back and say, "Oh, so who was that you were talking about again?"
Part of being a teacher is being like a cultural anthropologist. You have to really know. You gotta know the market. You gotta know what it is.
Absolutely,
in a genuine way.
Yeah. And I will say, 2017, that Jay-Z album was the best album of 2017. That's no debate.
I'll down that hill. I'll down that hill. Because Damn came out that year too. But I'm a down that 444 hill. I'm a down that hill. Even if I'm alone.
You ain't alone on that.
I'm with you.
You got some riders on this one, but when we think about that, right, the art of music and Kendrick album, right?
Yeah.
I know you were talking to me about Father Time and how it relates back to the book. If you want to throw that one in,
Yeah, for sure. So, you mentioned Kendrick. So while I was reading, a few chapters kind of pulled this out, but I was curious after having written the book, or maybe you heard it after or while you were writing, but are you familiar with the track Father Time from Kendrick's last project?
Yeah, and you know what's crazy is this book was done so long ago. So and people in publishing know that in order to get a publishing date, you have to be like a year removed. So this book was done. This book came out in May of 2022. This book was done around May of 2021. So, and the first person who pointed it out before I even heard Father Time was Tamir Hall. Tamir Hall is mostly known right now for the Tamir Hall Show, but Tamir is also a thinker and a serious journalist, and like I've been a big fan of her for a long time. And she did this Instagram video about the book, and I wasn't expecting. I'm like, because you just in the industry, you just never know. Right. You never know. Like you get so many people congratulating you on your DM, and and then in front of our peers, it's crickets, which is just a game, right? And it's not always intentional, but it wasn't expected. So she was like, in her journalist voice, like, "Did you hear Kendrick's song all the time?" And I said, what's wild? What's wild is that, and then she has books, so she knows they're publishing. She know I couldn't have heard it. So the crazy thing is that I think that a lot of us artists, a lot of us men, I think we're part of this paradigm shift where we are trying to move away from toxic behavior. We are trying to tap into our more sensitive sides. We are starting to realize vulnerability, and you can even trace some of that back to that 444 album we was talking about. That's not Jay-Z from Friend or Foe. That's not Jay-Z from Reasonable Doubt Jay-Z. Right. This is a guy who is dealing with the problems in his relationship, the problems and some of the fears that come with fatherhood. The idea of you if you don't take care of your family, you can't be rich. Like, so it's like these are things that I think we're moving toward that, and I think it's going to put all of us in a really, really good place to be better people, better to the people who we choose to spend our lives with, better to our children, better to our fellow brothers and sisters. I hope, I hope.
So part of another part, I just took a note here that I just wanted to come back to. There were some different parts of the narrative in the book where you were standing up for yourself and several friends, and you talked about just having this conversation with yourself about, like, I have to own this. I'm going to be, in charge of my own outcomes, or the hero in my own narrative. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit more for us as you think about? Actually, I don't like that question.
But you can. It's a good question because you can always choose to be the hero, even in bad situations. You don't have to be Batman. You can choose to be a hero. Like, so in the situation at the park, that could have went ugly in 3 different ways because, I know this person was suffering by how he spent his time. I know how strong I am in that area. I know how strong I am. I know it's 250 people out there that would break their neck to do me a favor. I know that. I know this. I know it. Right? No, we're not gonna attack him. We're gonna show him love. I'm gonna pull him aside. I'm gonna help if I can. I chose to be the hero. Yeah. In a situation where my wife and I are arguing about something, there's plenty of reasons I can create to act childish. There's so many reasons and things I can pick and pull at from like 5 years ago or something to be able to try to, to have a leg up in the argument. Or I can say, you know what, I was wrong. I understand. I feel like a terrible person. Let me apologize and let's try to make amends. So it's like in any situation, whether it's out in the street or in the publishing world or in your household or wherever, you can choose to, take the bad part as a lesson and learn from it. You can choose to apologize. You can choose to just not be childish. And that's, in my opinion, that's what being a hero is. I feel like I get slighted as much as anybody else, but I know it's not my job to take everything personal. It's not my job to take everything as if like, oh, woe is me, the world is crumbling down on me because of whatever. It's my job to take my lessons and learn and to try to be better.
Yeah, and as we think about that piece of being better, right? I feel like throughout the entire book, you shared this joy of music, right? When they were playing spades and the music was bumping and your pops was dancing, right? What is, for me, right, I'm thinking of like, when we think of Black Boy Smile, right? What is that, in your opinion, intersectionality between the joy and smile of Black people and music that fills souls oftentimes? You were talking about Luther and so many other great artists.
I think, I'm not saying this for everybody, but for me, coming from where I come from, that was one of the joys that was a constant. You wasn't always going to have extra money. You weren't always going to have this material thing or that material thing, but you always had that radio. You always had that tape. Luther was going to sound the same every time unless the tape popped or unless the record scratched. You knew Luther was going to sound the same. Every time you pressed that button, you was going to get that never too much, never too much. You knew you was going to get that, right? You knew you was going to get that. And it was just something that, regardless of how much pain or what was happening in the neighborhood, it was something that would put different households at ease. And, my mom listened to music all day. My dad listened to music all day. Like, it's not like they're not special because of that. Like, your grandmother is like, I remember my mother making the transition from just playing whatever rap song she was into to playing church music all day. Like, but either way, it was something that she got saved. She got saved to put the Queen Latifah away. So like, it's like actually it's wild. She used to listen to this song, and I don't know who sings this song. I Googled it, but I forgot again. But she used to listen to this song all day that used to be like, brutal with the millimeter. And I'm internalizing that as a child. Yeah. But when I got old, I'm like, because I said, Mom, what the hell? She's like, yeah, that was my song. I'm like, Mom, but he's saying he's being brutal with the millimeter. Yeah. And she was like, shit. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's
you got it.
I think that's powerful too, just to think about how even music, like even something simple as a chorus, where you are just repeating something just to feel connected or just to get in the, feel the vibes, but you're actually like repeating an affirmation, or you're like,
you're bobbing your head, so you're affirming it. You're saying, yes, I'm brutal with the millimeter.
And like you're internalizing it even physically, right, with the movement. What is your hope? And you also talk about just how books were transformative for you, and you talk several times about like kind of referring back to bell hooks and kind of using that as a compass for you. But talking about books being transformative, like what do you hope that your books are imbuing on the youth, because I know you pass out books at different schools, but also just the community or different folks?
I don't want students to say, oh my God, this is the first author I ever met. And I hear that too much. I hate it. I don't take pride in it. I feel like as a collective we can do better. I don't like when students say your book is the only one I read front to back. It makes me, I'm honored that it meant something to you, but I feel like you're being slighted, and I feel like you're being cheated. And when you talk about education, we talk about books, we talk about literature, we talk about proximity, these are things that have been snatched from us throughout every piece of history in this country, and it's still not working in many. As hard as we work, we still have so much. There's so much to do, right? So my hope, and this is something that I don't have a lot of mentors in this line of work. Most of my mentors are in film now. I've never really had a lot of mentors in publishing because it's just so competitive. Everybody think you're going to knock them out there square. And I'm not even mad at them from suffering from that kind of scarcity complex, because if you look at the numbers of black people in publishing, it's very slim. It's not like a big number. So they feel like there's only going to be one. That's going to be me, right? So I'm not even mad at them. But I tell my mentees who are definitely in a position to knock me off my square, which is totally fine, to give that, take that energy and that love inside them schools and let them kids know you love them by pulling up for them, because we didn't have it. We didn't have it. And because we didn't have it, like when we look at, like when people talk about like violence and they talk about dropout rates and they talk about these different things, all of these things have been pieced together since we first entered the classroom. These things are not like fresh and new ideas. Like when you growing up, you in a city like Baltimore, you're not really gonna have. If you were born in the '80s like me, then you didn't really have any black teachers. But when you look at the studies, you know how black students excel under black teachers. The dropout rate is different. The likelihood of being suspended is different. Being on your best behavior is different. Then if you go back 2 generations, then where these black teachers go at. Right. Brown versus Board of Education happened. Right. And then all of the black teachers were fired, right? So, it's not to knock any other teacher or whatever, but we know historically we can trace every problem, every inability to excel. We can trace it back and point to what the problem is, and we know this. So it's, well, what are we gonna do about it? And I can't force this writer, that writer to come in and be a part of that missing legacy. But I can challenge the people who I have direct contact with and be like, okay, bet, well, I'm not going to help you get an agent, or I'm not going to agent your agent for you if you don't do this and that for the people where you come from. Now let's have a conversation about that and what does that look like. So that's kind of what it is. And knowing all of this stuff, I know that I don't have enough life left to see a big change. But that doesn't, I'm still responsible for doing what I can do.
Thank you for tuning in to Edifying Together with Tamir D. Harper, a podcast dedicated to empowering teachers of color, brought to you by Edifying Teachers. Edifying Together is a joint production based on the award-winning Education Reboot podcast from Arthur Jones II, hosted by Tamir D. Harper.
Everybody doesn't always have to read the same thing, because everybody's not going to relate to the things. Just like music. Every student's not sitting in class listening to Dirk.